everyone. Glad that you guys are here. We're just going to maybe wait just a few more minutes before starting the show. Hello everyone. Glad that you guys are here. Just allow people to maybe wait just a few more minutes before. There's just this ominous pigeon in the window of our apartment that's just constantly coming back and giving the death eye.
Wants to hear you play.
Yeah, free concert through the window. Are you able to see anything?
Yeah, it's all good.
Mm-hmm. Do you think I should do the preamble, or do you think I should wait a few more minutes? Okay. Well, for those of us who are here, I suppose all the concerts I generally do, there's usually some sort of theme or connection that kind of runs through the selections that I choose to play. And the one that kind of inspires tonight's program is the cellist Pablo Casals. Known as one of the world's greatest cellists at the beginning of the 20th century, and just was a phenomenal player, and also most famously known for recording all 6 of the Bach suites. And what is interesting is that I know that on Wikipedia it says that he recorded them between the better part of 4 years, between 1936 to 41 or something like that, but like according to bibliographies, like he started actually much earlier than 1930s. He spent the better part of a decade setting himself down to record all 6 of the cello suites, and was credited with being the first cellist to ever actually record all 6 in their completion. Before his recordings, the suites were sort of these little small encore pieces that generally cellists would sometimes just throw at the end of a concert just to have a little something to close a concert with, and they weren't necessarily considered anything as great works of art. They were just things that existed for the cello that people might have chosen to play at some point or other. Actually, for those of us who are curious, there is an edition by the famous cellist Grützmacher, who made his own arrangements, we shall call them, of the 6 suites, and you can go and find those online somewhere, and you can just kind of see what he kind of felt that his various levels of ornamentation should be for each suite and each dance. And if you can find them recognizable, you're doing a lot better than a lot of other folks. I think that kind of gives like just sort of like the first introduction to the first piece, and this being one of Pablo Casals's greater projects that he did of trying to enrich the cello repertoire at the time and trying to really bring the cello to the forefront and develop it as a solo instrument and in its own right. And I think that's also like interesting that as the instrument was being greatly experimented with at the beginning of the 20th century, like even at the time of the Bach suites themselves, they were written on an instrument that had only been around for the better part maybe of about 30 years of an instrument that is known as the cello. So even Bach himself, while writing these things, whether people are willing to admit that whether they were written for the cello or not, or some variation of that, they were definitely new works that were kind of exploring the new possibilities that this instrument had to offer. That was something that filled in the tenor range and also like the bass range. And I find that with the second suite, what makes it very unique is the fact that throughout the entire, all the prelude and the following dances, there's always this kind of allusion to 3 voices that are playing. Not necessarily always at the same time, but there's kind of like this idea of all these multiple voices kind of like interacting with each other and going onwards and showing a different trajectory each time. And That's what I think really makes all the Bach suites really special, but especially like number 2, in my humble opinion. And without any further ado, it's time to start. Concludes the first half. We're going to take a brief 10-minute intermission, and at that point I'm going to mute you just so that way I can retune the instrument, and we will see you back here in 10 minutes. And if you're not back here in 10 minutes, don't worry, there will be another preamble, that's the word I'm looking for, another concert preamble. Anyways, see you guys in 10. Bye for now. Daniel? Oh, yeah, no, sorry, okay. Make it go. Are we rolling?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, here we are in the second half. As I mentioned at the beginning of the concert, the overarching link is the cellist Pablo Casals, in which this entire suite is written and dedicated to Pablo Casals. Now, whether he ever played it is kind of unknown. There's no premiere date that's been attached to it so far to the knowledge that I have of this. And someone asked once in discussion about Emánuel Moór, like, who was he and what did he do? Well, he was a man of many trades. He was a pianist, and he was a very good pianist. He toured quite extensively in Europe in his earlier days, and he was a student of Franz Liszt, and obviously he was a composer, but he was also an inventor of musical instruments. And one that has survived is the double manual piano, which was made in order for pianists to be able to play octaves and tenths more easily, because there would be two manuals beside each other. So instead of stretching out the hand like this, they would just put their hands upwards like this. So for the thumb to play the bass note, and then any other finger to play the upper voice. And him and his wife, I believe, also made like a technique manual for this piano, so that way students could play difficult composers like Rachmaninoff and Chopin and other works by Liszt for hands that were kind of more smaller in scale, as opposed to the monstrous hands that all of these pianists kind of possessed. And there was another invention that predates the double manual piano, the Moór piano as it's known as, and that would be, unfortunately, an unnamed, and it might be in a museum somewhere, but something that was described as a violin that's a meter longer than a standard violin, and plays like a cello with 4 to 6 strings, and is operated by a pedal for the bow. And this was an invention that he released and then was like criticized for, because they were not necessarily sure what he was trying to accomplish with this device that was operated by a foot pedal, I'm assuming. Again, I could not find any pictures of it online, but so despite the success of that, his double manual piano was more successful, and in fact, Maurice Ravel, who was a friend of Emánuel Moór, he said that the sounds that the double manual piano made was what he had in mind for most of his compositions. So he praised Emánuel Moór for his inventiveness and the genius that was behind this piano that he had made. And so where does Pablo Casals come in? Well, as Emánuel Moór was a very popular composer in his day, he wrote a cello sonata for a different cellist, and upon hearing it, Pablo Casals met the cellist and said, "Do you think that you could put me in touch with Emánuel Moór?" And the cellist said, "Yeah, no, for sure." And then they met and they played some music together, some of Emánuel Moór's music, and Pablo Casals apparently during rehearsal stopped and said, "I think you're the most amazing composer I've ever seen. You're first rate, your music is so sublime, like you're it." And he was just, they were very fast friends. And there's many works that Emánuel Moór wrote for the cello, and I would say probably most of them are probably dedicated to Pablo Casals, who, as I said earlier in the concert, that he was doing the best that he could to promote the instrument and to show that there was so much more that composers could tap into for the solo cello, or just the cello as a solo instrument in its own right. And what I would say that with this piece, what I think is absolutely stunning, is not just like the compositional design, but like the harmonic textures and the extreme chromaticisms that Emánuel Moór puts into this instrument. from what I understand, he was a violin player himself, but he also played the cello passably well as he could. And so he had a lot of technical knowledge about the instrument, and so probably very inspired by the brilliance that Pablo Casals was as an artist, that this suite came to be. And I hope you find it, probably just a small rundown of all the movements in sequence, I suppose. So the first movement kind of follows a lot of the improv forms of Baroque idioms of preluding. The second movement is is a toccata of sorts. The third movement is, I'd say, the biggest nod towards Pablo Casals, as it has a lot of Catalonian licks in it that you will hear. That'll be very apparent when you get there. The fourth movement kind of, for me, sounds as if it's using these organ-like textures of chords and ornaments, and it's very heavenly and delicate. And then the last movement, again, kind of falls into more Baroque idioms that were kind of used around this point at the beginning of the 20th century, where they were taking older compositional devices and forms and kind of putting them into new harmonic textures, new devices, new kind of everything. Just something that would be recognizable, but then also revamped. And without further ado, here is Emánuel Moór's solo cello suite. Okay. Oh. There you have it. Okay. Thank you all for being here, for listening, and we're not going to just like suddenly close up shop, so we're going to have a Q&A session that comes afterwards, so I hope you studied, because you guys don't get to ask me the questions, I'm asking you the questions. So, hope you studied. All right. Oh, great. I guess we'll just have Daniel read off the chat or something, or let's just see what's going on over here. Yeah. Yeah, no, let's roll it. I mean, might as well. I prefer Benjamin, but like, honestly, do not worry about it. Hold on, folks. We're just working on something. I can totally hear you. I don't think that problem is on this end. I think it's more on.
Every time there's one thing. There we go. That should fix the issue. And we'll try that again. Okay. So I think we're back now. Great. So yeah. So Benjamin, thank you so much for that great concert, and you played so much great repertoire, and you played it with such finesse. I already said this already, and I was really, really impressed with how well it went. And it just, I think everyone was having a great experience. And for everyone who has contributed to the concert already, thank you very much for doing so. Please do so. If you haven't contributed to this concert, every musician who plays in this deserves millions of dollars, but, we try to make sure that we can pay artists well. So 100% of the contributions go directly to the artists. So you can check that out in the chat there. It's in paypal.me/concerts for end of time. Also, during this chat, this little post-concert chat, it's very informal and very relaxed atmosphere. So please feel free to ask any questions you have for Benjamin here. He played all this great music, and a lot of it is underplayed. The Bach is certainly heard all over, but this Moór is not heard very often. So so I'm going to turn it to you, Benjamin. So how do you feel after that huge performance?
Well, I mean, as you could have seen, me flipping all the pages and things, it's a lot of music kind of packed into 20 minutes. I mean, and it's all just there's really not a lot of moments to kind of chill. You just gotta somehow find a place to just relax in. And I don't know, I just find that the music always goes, and especially this piece, just because you can't believe your ears tonally, because he'll cadence in A minor, and then he'll still be in G major. So it's okay, and then you just kind of have to go with it. So I find that this music kind of just constantly keeps me on my toes, and also hopefully in peak physical shape, because it's a bit of a workout.
Yeah, for sure. There's really an athletic component to the jig and that Bach, and the last movement and the second movement of that Moór were really, really intensive. I mean, there's a lot going on there. How do you prepare for a concert like this? During these crazy times, what does one do?
I mean, I guess the most simplistic answer is just keep practicing. But to be honest with you, I'm sure that we're all kind of sick of seeing those posters online that are just our work doesn't stop, etc., etc. But
yeah.
To be honest with you, I have to say that preparing for something like this, I mean, first it's just okay, to be totally real, you just gotta find the motivation, and that's the hardest thing. I can definitely say that this year, it has been a battle for everybody. It's a battle without community, and it's very easy to feel detached and alone. And honestly, it's very hard to combat those feelings. So I would say that I don't know, I just kind of dove into a project, and for people with various levels of energy and and being able to do things honestly, it was, for me, I'd say that the preparing was mostly just trying to find the motivation to push myself to perform. And it was hard, so I mean, so there's that, just to recognize the times. And then after that, to go to the more lighter stuff, so sorry for getting a little dark there, but also just fully acknowledging where we are in the world right now as musicians and people, and everyone in all walks of life. Trying to find rep that inspires you, and also just something that every time I play something, I always try to connect it to something else that I'm doing. So I just was doing a lot of reading of Pablo Casals in my spare time or whatever, and just kind of was looking around at his life, and then you just kind of discovered he did all these things in music. And so I say that how is that part of the preparation? I usually try to organize all my concerts on some sort of theme. So this is the Pablo Casals connection, if you will, and just showing his world, where it was both the sense of revival by using the Bach suites, but then also being very much into a pioneer of doing brand new works and contemporary music and what have you that he was working in at that time.
Yeah, I mean that was a great theme to choose. I mean, Pablo Casals is a a great cellist, and there's so much that he did for what we for the way we think of the cello now. I mean, the idea of it being a solo instrument is really a lot of it comes from him. I mean, the image of the cellist as a soloist, a lot of it seems to come from him. Is that it? I often compare it to Andre Segovia, in the classical guitar, or do you find that's a kind of similar thing, or were there other people doing like solo cello concerts in large concert venues before him?
I mean, like, there probably is, like, a history of, like, solo cello concerts somewhere before Pablo Casals, but, like, I'd say that, like, they were probably definitely, like, not the norm. Most of the time, like, from what I understand, it was probably, like, concerts is what we know now is, or what we know now is so different from what it was way back when, especially in Pablo Casals' time, where it would kind of take on these different shapes, where there'd be one concert, 12 different artists. So
right.
You have something like a brass quintet, and then you have a string quartet, and then you might have an octet of something later, and then something with piano and voice, and then something with just piano, or then something, like a sonata with cello, piano, whatever, or solo instrument and piano. So yeah, I would say that he was definitely a forerunner, but around that time there's a lot of great cellists as well running around. Like Grützmacher was definitely one of them, and David Popper and Davidoff, and there was a lot of cellists at the beginning of the 20th century that were really wonderful. They were just sometimes like these little isolated pockets, but there is a lot there. But the thing is, I mean, that being said though, like not a lot of it unfortunately survived once a lot of these cellist composers, improvisers, etc. Like once they kind of passed away, a lot of the times like publishing houses and things that kept their music alive just kind of took it off the shelves and just kind of put it away. So you have all these great musicians and a lot of these great and talented cellists that just suddenly get kind of just like swept up. And also, not to mention, but there's also like a few cellists that near the end of their lives, because they were popular earlier in their lives, they immediately fall off because they're seen as too sappy and not contemporary enough. So critics kind of just like start shoveling them in before they've actually expired. So like there's a lot of stuff that kind of like goes on with that. But but to address what you said about Pablo Casals, he's definitely a fundamental cellist who like really brought the cello to the forefront and had a really big touring career for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we actually have I'm scrolling through to get the comments here, and we have a question from Richard Smith. It says, "How did you learn about Moór?" I was going to ask you this question, but they got it right here. So how did you learn about Moór? I've never come across him before.
I mean, actually, to be honest with you, I don't know how to answer this question honestly, because like. I find that I usually discover, so on the computer.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of like looking at okay, so it kind of started with Pablo Casals, and then, he mentioned, Wikipedia and whatever, and you kind of just started there, and you kind of like look around, and then I came across, I think it was one of the other cello sonatas that like Moór wrote, and it was mentioned that was how Pablo Casals was to meet Moór. And then after that, I was like, so who's this Moór guy? And then, I looked him up on Wikipedia, and I was like, oh, wow. Like, apparently he's really, really popular, or was really popular. Mm-hmm. And if for those of you who are curious to see, like, more of his works, not just within the chambers variety, like, there's currently a revivalist movement going on in Europe. So they're re-recording, or rather recording, maybe perhaps for the first time, his 8 symphonies. So there's a bunch of them on YouTube. And if you want to go
8 symphonies?
He wrote 8 symphonies, a couple operas. Like, he wrote a ton of music, so
wow.
He was very prolific. And to be honest with you, to describe his symphonic style, kind of imagine like Mahler meets Debussy, and then they have a love child, and that's Moór. It's this weird combination of just like Mahler's really intense play with strange forms, and then Debussy's kind of like strange harmonic language, and then he just kind of smashed the two together, and then there you have like, what you, in a semblance, what you heard today, which is just kind of like this expansion of tonality, and then going back to tonality, and then stretching it beyond what's recognizable at points.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
It's really nice to hear, a great piece of music that you don't often get to hear on the cello. I think that there's a lot of new music being made, all the time, and it's really wonderful to hear music that's like in the here and now of the 21st century, that's just fresh, with fresh ink on it, you know. We'll hear a lot of that, and we'll hear a lot of classic composers, but it's not too often that you get to hear someone from the 20th century, in the early 20th century, that, you know, was just a great composer, because they're kind of in this narrow window where sometimes they're forgotten on the program, and it's really nice to hear that. So yeah, thank you for playing that. And that piece was just like so well written for the cello. It was he clearly knew how to write idiomatically for it. It looked like, you know, it did not look like the translation of a pianist's writing going onto the cello. It looked like, you know, yeah, it was really, really cool to watch, at least from a guitarist perspective.
Yeah, I mean, like, what I find that, like, you know, while playing this piece, that not only do I discover more about, like, Moór's compositional language and sort of, like, you know, how he sort of saw music and how he was sort of experimenting it, but I also, like, come to a much greater appreciation for Pablo Casals, because this was written for him, and so, you know, it just really tells you about his style and about, like, the ways that he, like, really pushed for a lot of different chords in this entire piece. Because, like, to be honest with you, learning this entire suite, there's were a lot of new learning things, just being like, I'm not sure how he might have done them completely. Okay, full confession, there's no printings or fingerings in this entire suite. You just kind of do it yourself. So, like, if I'm doing something that he might not have done, I had to make it up because I tried to do the best, but I also tried to use what I think he probably would have done.
And you didn't have very many recordings to reference, I guess. Are there any recordings of this piece yet?
No. If you look at this piece, there's not, like, as far as I know, I mean, you can look on, for example, like, IMSLP, they sometimes include the information about, like, when it was published, who published it, and potential premiere date. So as far as I know, like, and I'm not trying to grandstand on this or anything, but, like, Pablo Casals may have been had this work dedicated to him. It might have been premiered, but it might have been a private premiere, basically something very much like this, a very small audience, for example, in someone's living room somewhere, which is very common, but no one wrote it down, or the records have been lost. And since then, no one has recorded it, as far as I know. I've looked around, there hasn't been any recordings of it. There also hasn't been, like, any, like, internet hits saying someone playing this. So as far as I know, this may be the first time this work has been played in about a century.
Wow. So you're bringing it back. This is a great moment to watch.
I mean, like, yeah, I mean, in a way, I mean, like, you know, I want people to, like, see this work because, like, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there that just doesn't get played, you know, as much anymore. And honestly, sometimes it has nothing to do with the quote-unquote quality of a work. Solo cello works tend to be looked down upon, as in, well, if it's not Bach, Beethoven, or someone else is equally good, it can't be that great. And it's like, well, in my humble opinion, like, you know, strictly subjective opinion, I really do think that, as Pablo Casals said of Moór, that this work is truly sublime. Yeah,
I was immediately stunned by it. I was like, wow, I want to play this. It's like, even on the guitar, you know, because we sometimes steal, don't tell anyone, but we sometimes steal the cello repertoire. Especially from Kodai and people like that. So sometimes I was thinking, how would that sound on the guitar? This is so beautiful. It just wouldn't sound as good as the cello, of course, but it would be really nice to hear.
This. I mean, you know, people should play this piece. It's a really wonderful piece.
This is very cool. So I guess that kind of ties into my next question. So right now you're doing a Doctor of Musical Arts at the University of Toronto, and you know, you're going to be a doctor of the cello in cello performance. Tell us a little bit about what your main focus is in your research, and is it related to Moór at all, or is this just a happy, like just a moment of inspiration to play his music?
Honestly, man, that's a really big question. So my main research is studying embodiment in performance, and in a way, how does that sort of connect to narrative gesture in a way? Wow. So, like, how is it that, you know, how certain techniques and certain ways of playing, like, how is it that we watch something, and how, like, as an instrumentalist, how do we feel that this means something, or how does it feel physically, like, and how does that translate into the sound? And then someone also watching that, how do they understand that, like, oh, you know, this seems like a very, you know, quote unquote, like, angelic kind of like passage, or what exactly is it? Like, is it the way that the hands move? Is it the way that the harmonics like interact with something? Or there's tons of harmonics that sound very supernatural, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of like, it's based on looking at things like that. And then I'm using, for example, the Isai solo cello sonata as sort of like a case study of how, when we're playing on an instrument, how does that sort of carry like a narrative design, and how does it felt through the body, and how is it like sort of interpreted while going through the experience of music?
That's a very cool concept. So you're basically, if I'm understanding, it's you're trying to kind of catalog gestures into a kind of, you're kind of translating the movements that people make into a sort of meaning that we typically associate with it. Or is that correct? Or that's fairly correct. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, maybe not necessarily like this concretely means that. It's right.
More, you know, in a way, it's like how this suggests this. Like,
I see.
You know, for example, like not that I'm steady. Like, okay, because I just played them more. Like, you know, there's sometimes like all of a sudden the texture just stops and then a new one starts. So it's like, you know, there's this one character, this rolling gesture, or this like super chordal one, and then all of a sudden there's this very up high and very like spidery like movement. So it's like, it's kind of like a personality change in a way, or there's a new character that just, you know, quote unquote, character, persona, new gesture that's happening. And it's like, you know, I feel it while I play, but also if someone wasn't watching and could just hear it, they would also just be able to see, oh, a texture is different. Oh, the timbre has changed, the dynamics changed, the new area of the bow, etc., etc. So it's like how the instrument itself, like when we play it and when we feel it, like, you know, there are certain things that it's like, oh, this kind of feels like this analog movement. Like, for example, like, there's a moment in the Isai cello sonata that, like, he writes this really weird up-high passage on the G, and it kind of is one of those things that as a cellist you don't want to, it's usually where the wolf tone is. Well, thankfully, because I have the wolf lemmer, you're not going to hear it, but like, he makes you play like super pianissimo right there, which unfortunately sometimes drives the wolf tone kind of crazy. So when you kind of play this like really haunting gesture, it almost kind of feels like as a cellist, like, you know, I have to either be very anxious, and then there's another time where he has the hands up in a higher position in the same area, and it literally feels like I'm just taking the instrument and choking it. So
right. I was gonna say like, choked. Yeah, it feels. Yeah, that's the word that immediately came to mind.
It's kind of like, you know, so it kind of like has that like gesture to it, and it also has that sort of like character. So, you know, because you're literally doing it with your body, and the instrument is being choked underneath you. So it's this really interesting like connection of both like the instrument and the body, and like the resulting sound. Wow,
that's really really powerful. That's going to be a lot of writing. It's going to be a lot of research, and yeah. It's gonna be. It sounds. It's pretty deep. That's a very very technical subject for someone who's a performer. Do you find that the amount of writing that you do for a dissertation like that is, you know, do you find it like takes away from your performance time, or do you find you have to like just focus on one thing at a time and then go on to playing more for this period of time and then writing more this period of time, or do you just try to do it all at once?
And like, I can't actually even answer that honestly, because like sometimes it's like, you know, for preparing for something like this, I kind of put my tunnel vision on to make sure that like I was in the best playing shape as possible, and then there's other times where like I have to do this really weird balance where it's like I get up in the morning and then I like, you know, try to like go through a practice session, and then after that it's like, okay, 300 words, let's go, or something. Right. Or like, I gotta read this chapter of a book today. And so I try, like, honestly, I try to balance it, and I find that sometimes that fails, and then sometimes I focus on playing, and then after that, you know, then I have to start reading like crazy or writing like crazy. So I can't honestly give you, like, this is exactly what I do, because I don't even know what I'm doing.
Full disclosure, we're in the same boat. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely know what that feels like. Wow.
Grad life.
Yeah, it's challenging times. All right, so I wanna bring it more towards you, Benjamin. Can you tell us a little bit about how you started learning the cello?
By force. No, I mean, like...
Someone put a gun to your head and it's like, you play beautiful music!
Like C major scale. No, okay, I wish I had, like, a really good, cute story to say about this, but honestly, so...
It's all, just be candid, that's what it's all about.
So, like, so my dad is a musician, so...
Great.
He's a conductor, so like, you know, to be honest with you, growing up, music was always around me. I just was always kind of just busy doing my own thing, whatever that was at that age. So, you know, like probably just like running around and screaming, whatever, being in pain. So, you know, good stuff. Anyways.
Yeah.
So, like, my mom said to my father one day, like, you know, the kids need to understand what you do, and in order to do that, they need to do it. And then my dad was like, no, I don't think that they should play music necessarily. And my mom said, yeah, okay, well, let's negotiate. They're still going to play an instrument. And my dad was like, okay, fine, but I choose the instruments. And
wow.
About a week after that conversation that I did not hear.
This you are not part and parcel.
Not in the room, probably. I mean,
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden I knew that like I was going to play the cello, and that was what basically happened. I went to the Langley Community Music School, and
cool.
I had an instrument.
And that's Langley, BC, right?
Yeah, Langley,
yeah,
BC.
British Columbia. Okay.
Yeah, and back then the Langley Community Music School was sort of this collection of buildings in a park before they had their new building made, and I studied there with Mr. Hampton, and he was my first cello teacher, who was also a cellist for my dad's orchestra at the time in Abbotsford, BC.
Okay.
And so I kind of just like started there, and then and I think I was like 8. How old is one in grade 3? 8, 10?
They're usually 8 because 5 is kindergarten, right? So grade 1 would be 6, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So I think I was like 8-ish years old, and then I just kind of like started playing, and you know, outside of the first few, you know, bump years where you know you're not sure if you really want to do it. By the time, well, actually, hold on, it wasn't even a year. Like literally, I started playing in grade 3, and I was like, for the first few months, I was just totally not interested, and then by grade 4, I just came into the lesson one day, and I told my teacher, Mr. Hampton, I was like, I want to be a professional musician.
Wow. And how old were you when you said you wanted to be a professional musician? Is this still 8 years old?
No, this is like the year later. So I was like 9, and honestly, the reason why was because I was so wrapped up, and I was just completely taken by Mr. Hampton. I wanted to be exactly like him. So,
okay.
Yeah, like I loved his humor. Like every time I walked into a lesson, like, you know, he would look at something and he's like, oh, you know, like this piece reminds me of, you know, and he'd take a book out and he'd show me the pictures, and we'd read things in French, Spanish, whatever, and he'd have all these different things that he'd like show me like history in front of me, so that way, you know, we'd play, you know, Bach, Handel, whatever, like there was something to actually look at and like engage with, and and that's just like what made me completely like enamored with him, and I was like, yeah, like I want to be exactly like him.
That sounds so cool to make music learning so immersive like that.
Yeah, he's truly a brilliant teacher and a brilliant cellist, and honestly, like he taught me so much, and a lot of what he taught me was very fundamental in, I'd say, a lot of my playing and a lot of my like perceptions of music and a lot of things. He's definitely been like a major inspiration in everything that I've done, and he was also a major, and he still is a major. What's the word I'm looking for?
Like influence?
I mean, encourager is the wrong word, but he really fosters like new music. He's commissioned like dozens of works. If you look up his name in the Canadian Music Society, the CMC. What's the one? Yeah, I think it's the
Canadian
CMC.
Music
Center. Yeah, it's the Canadian Music Center. If you look up his name, like there'll be probably something like at least half 100, like 50 or 100 works that he commissioned personally to have write for the cello. So.
Wow, I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, so he and also if for those of you who are interested to read more about him, there's 2 books that he has out. One about his father, Colin Hampton, A Cellist's Life. It's out there, and then the other one is a little bit kind of a it's a musical story that are built around his musical experiences, and it's called Jan's Life in Pieces or something like that, like, or something. I'll have to look it up, but like Jan's Life in 5 Pieces or something like that. I have to look it up. For some reason, the title is escaping me, but it is out there. And for those of you who are watching and are a UT student, it is in the library.
Cool. Wow. So he was not just a teacher, but also like a philosopher and a thinker. You know, there's something really cool about working with somebody like that.
Yeah, I mean, I like, you know, the more, like, as I got older and got to know more about him and his life and career, it was just like, you know, I still feel the same way as I did when I was in grade 4. It's just like, you know, I wanted to be like, you know, obviously, you know, when you're a child, you want to be exactly like somebody, and you know, to a point, like, I still want to do the same thing, but I want to do what he did as well, and you know, except obviously be myself. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, I totally understand. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, I mean, all the things that he did, like, just are still inspiring to me and still carry me forward through all the things that I like want to do and hope to do in the future.
Wow, that is actually a really cool origin story. That's and there's lots of cuteness in there. So that's great.
Like, I mean, honestly, I was such a horrid child at the beginning. Like, I just like, honestly, like, if it was not something that naturally aligned with my interest, I was like, okay, whatever. And then I would just like, I mean, like, I don't think I was like a malicious kid. I was just a kid who was just very busy and liked being imaginative, playing, and just like doing that stuff. That I really loved engaging with the imagination and things like that. So like,
yeah.
So bringing that kind of kid into something so technical and like, you know.
But music is supposed to be, in theory. In theory, it's creative.
You know, no, and it absolutely is. But you know, there's a certain like organized discipline that comes with it. I can definitely say, as a young kid starting off on the cello, boy, was I not that kid. Yeah,
there's like an athletic discipline that's required that is quite demanding, and if you have the right support group, it's much more manageable to do it. Yeah, it's really, it's a whole lot of things. So one other thing that I noticed about this concert, I mean, you were obviously playing so well, but your cello was sounding beautiful too. Could you tell us a little bit about your instrument?
Sure. I guess
if you're comfortable with that. It's just,
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, what would people like to know?
Yeah, like who's the maker? Like what makes it special? Like when is it from?
So this cello is from New Mexico, and the maker is David Karen. And he's been a amazing, he's made a lot of cellos, and I think this was, so it says number 180, but that's like, I think the total numbers of instruments that he's made or so. I'll have to, it's one of these things, it's like one of those details that, you know, you hear it once, and then unfortunately, because grad brain, it just pushes it right out sometimes. So like, David, if you're watching, I'm really sorry. I am so sorry. I'm sure I'll look it up later, I promise. So like, I'm so sorry. But so yeah, so David Karen made this instrument in New Mexico, and what is so amazing about his cellos are, honestly, like when I first picked it up and started playing on it, honestly, it was just one of those things that I like to call them brain cellos. Like, you just think it and it just starts to do it for you. And
nice.
It felt really easy under the fingers, and like the action was just like, just for the left hand was so easy to do. And then just like with the bow, I just felt like I could do anything with it. And so, you know, like that's just some of the playing stuff. But then for the actual sounding things, like, what I'd say is amazing about David's instruments is that they kind of, I mean, it doesn't make sense if I say it's like a bird cage, but it like literally kind of just feels like it has this big ring to it that like when you play on something, like on a really good day, like when the weather is not kind of like constantly fluctuating like it has been for the past few days, you can hear almost like when you play an open string or other notes, or other notes in the lower register, you can almost hear like an entire chord form underneath your ear, and so it has this huge overtone series that just like, when I picked up his instrument and started playing with it, I was just like, oh my god, like I've never heard a cello have so many like harmonics or harmonic frequencies just happening at once, and it was just something that just like took my breath away. It was like every time I played the instrument or learned something that I had learned a long time before, like I felt like I was playing almost with 2 or 3 people in the same room. And so, so that's definitely what I love about like this instrument, and like what David Karen has like done with his instruments. It's just that like all the pieces that I learn, I always try to like listen for like a counterpoint that's happening under my fingers and through the cello, which is, just what makes me love this instrument so much. And also just like the fact that like it's just a gorgeous, beautiful color. I mean, aesthetics are
the varnish is the varnish is really nice.
Yeah.
The finish is really nice.
Yeah, and I just love, so yeah, I mean, I hope that answers the question. I mean, if other people have questions about the instrument, I'm more than happy to answer it, but like, so like that's, but like, for the things I said, like this is the reason why I just love playing on this cello. It's just, this a great personality, and she just like really works well.
It's just got a great personality. The cello has a great personality. It's true. Instruments do have personalities. I always think of them as people.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And that's why I love about like solo cello works, because it just really like helps you just like get into your instrument, and it just feels really good.
Yeah, the cello is just one of those instruments that everyone loves the sound of it. It's just, yeah. I as a guitarist, I like the counterpoint. I love that, but sometimes when I listen, I don't think there is any instrument out there. I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, but I don't think there's any instrument out there that can just make one melody sound so beautiful. It's the cello is just, it's the human range. It's got this real power about it. So when you were playing today, you played, of course, one of the Bach cello suites. You played the D minor suite, the second one. And can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges of playing a work like that that's so well known, that's played by so many instruments, even the guitarists, we all play it. My prof recently came out with an album of all of the 6 cello suites arranged for solo guitar, Jeffrey McFadden. It's a great album if you want to check it out. It's on Naxos. But yeah, all these instrumentalists play this music, and of course so many cellists have performed it. What are some of the challenges of playing a piece like that, that's so well known, so kind of overplayed, for lack of a better word? Because you played it so well. I mean, yes.
Honestly, I'd say that the major danger, or like, at least speaking personally, I don't want to speak for other cellists out there. I think that like, because these are pieces that, have stood the test of time, and, as you said, like everyone plays them and kind of everyone knows them. I guess like the danger is, at least for me, is doing it exactly like somebody else. In a way. So like, you don't really kind of find your own voice, which is sometimes, you hear someone play like, Anna Belsma, fantastic cellist, and like, so beautiful, and with the authentic setup and everything, or Pablo Casals, so like his version, or or even like Janusz Starker, and all, like any golden age cellist, like you listen to what they do and you're just like, wow, like they just play it so beautifully. So and it just goes into your inner ear, and then sometimes you're like, wait, why am I doing it like this? And then you listen to a CD later and you're like, oh my god, it's because I learned it there. So I mean, I'd say that like, at least, as I said, speaking for myself, that that's definitely like one of the challenges, because you want to say something unique, and every time I come back to one of the suites, like I always try to make it my mission to try to find something new to do with it, or something new to express, something new to explore. And honestly, I'd say that the difficulty for me is trying to, push myself to always find new things, because sometimes you find that performance that you really like and you're like, yeah, okay, I think I got it. But then, you don't want to keep on just doing the same, then a living CD, if you will, like, he's doing the same performance, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but like, I'd say that for myself, I always want to explore a new avenue through the music, and I'd say that that's sometimes just like, telling yourself, okay, you gotta do something different, like that's just, you gotta kind of battle it out and kind of just like figure out a new interpretation. So I'd say that that's definitely the thing, and not necessarily to have someone hold sway over that by listening to a recording. I mean, just for a little bit of anecdotal history, like a lot of cellists went to study with Pablo Casals, and they were obviously learning the Bach suites, and of course he was the expert at the time who recorded them and knew them and was performing them all over the world. And students would come into the lesson and they would play the piece for him, and then he'd give them feedback. He'd be like, oh no, so do this slur here, do this here, use that fingering. And then, students would inevitably be practicing one of the 6 suites, and they'd be playing the exact same thing, and they're like, wait, why are you doing that? And then he'd be like, he or she would be like, well, our teacher said that I should do it this way. Why, what are you doing? And then he's like, oh, well, he's telling me to do it this way. 2 very different ways.
That's
so
really
then
funny.
students started sharing their music together, and then they started all doing the exact same thing. And then apparently, Pablo Casals, when he was in a lesson and he had like a few people on the same day and they were all doing the same kind of like things, he was very angry, and he was like, when I tell one person to do something, that's for them, not you. So don't you dare come into a lesson and do what I told him to do.
He's not trying to make little clones of himself. He's trying to make everyone in the studio find their voice and play the way they should, the way that sounds best in his opinion.
Exactly. I mean, and I don't think that he did the same way twice ever himself. And then also, like, he was approached by many different publishers to, like, have the Pablo Casals edition, of which he refused to do, And honestly, for a man, I think he was very wise. I think that, thank God he didn't do it, because then we'd all be doing it like Pablo Casals.
Right, they'd just pull out that version and that would be it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can, by listening to his recordings, we can figure out what he did. So if someone wanted to, they could just listen and transcribe it. But again, that kind of goes against his philosophical spirit of being like, these works weren't for him, they were for the instrument and for instrumentalists to make their choices over. So the ambiguities that we do have, we should embrace and kind of just like put them together in our own right. So
yeah, it's art. It's not just a sport. You have to find your own meaning for it. And there's many ways to make those calculations and make those decisions. So we have some people in the chat here just saying hello. No questions yet, but hi Ethan and hi Alexander Bougie. How you doing, Alex Bougie? Alex Bougie is from the Auto Guitar Trio. He's awesome guitarist. And he said, "You're not in trouble, Dan. 'Tis the truth." When he was talking about the cello being the most beautiful melodic instrument, and I feel the guitarists, we have a real a kind of kinship with the cellists, or a sort of admiration for cellists, because they are able to play in the same range. They're kind of a tenor instrument like us, and there's just so many sounds you can make on the cello. It's so colorful. It's so beautiful, and there's so much counterpoint in it in the solo writing. It's just all of these cello suites fit perfectly on the guitar, and it's just so nice to hear them authentically played so well. So this is great. And one other question I'd like to ask you a little bit more about is just your experience of performing in a live stream concert. We did this live stream concert, and it's so different than playing in real life on a stage. Can you tell me about how you felt that difference today, or did you find it was the same maybe?
No, I mean, I think that to answer that question, I'm going to kind of quote somebody else who it kind of feels appropriate in this situation, and that's the reason why I'm going to answer that this way. I didn't really feel that was going to be... So earlier this week, I was listening to an interview an interview of Jimi Hendrix, and they asked him...
awesome guitarist.
No, yeah. Some he was asked, like, you know, when you are on stage, like, how does that feel when, you know, there's like, you know, thousands of fans in front of you? Like, how does that feel for you? As, you know, they were kind of expecting probably him to answer something like, oh, I feel like a rock star, and, you know, everything's great, la. Like, it was interesting how he's kind of like, he said, like, you know, I get onto the stage and I just start playing, and, you know, if the audience is not feeling it, you know, because I'm trying to play for them and try to, you know, as he said, I'm trying to turn them on. And quote,
Yeah.
You know, he wants them to like get into the music, and he said, you know, and if they don't, then I just start playing for myself. So, you know, and he just, you know, and I think that, you know, honestly, that answer I think kind of works with live streaming in a way. You know, the audience is there, and the energy that they feed, obviously, like, you know, it can't necessarily come through a computer screen. But, you know, in order to reach them, I'm trying to, you know, what Jimi Hendrix said was that, you know, I'm playing for myself, but also knowing that, like, if I'm truly in what I feel and how the music is moving me, or what I'm trying to do with the music and say something, that they will inevitably feel it as well. So that's kind of like the way that I kind of like see live streaming. Like, you know, there are folks watching that I trust that I have to be there, but also at the same time I have to like be into it. So it's kind of like that way, like, you know, if you're not playing for anybody, you know, the best way to do it is just to play for yourself, and that kind of like helps the music to like speak and be something, not just like, you know, in a room with a camera and mic, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't see the technology as like the end. I see like the technology as the means to like go and communicate farther.
Definitely. Yeah, and we clearly had people all over watching this concert. I from what I understand, some people from BC who are watching, some people from Toronto, all over Canada. It's really, really exciting. So you know, it's there are some real benefits to doing this that are really apparent when you do these, because you can access so many different people. I mean, how difficult would it be to get someone who's living in BC to come see you play in a concert? It would be very, very difficult. You know, you know, and so now anyone can watch you. It's just amazing. Yeah, it's just it was a really, really great concert today, and I had so much fun watching this. So does anyone have any more questions for Benjamin here? Or feel free to ask anything. There aren't that many. There are no stupid questions. You can ask anything you want. Mostly. Oh, and Barbara Blakely has a nice comment here. Gestures and embodiment, embodying the music, interpreting the music with every fiber of your being. That was fascinating. Referring to your doctoral thesis there.
Thank you.
So, are you in your fourth year of your doctorate now?
I'm going, come September, that is my fourth year, yes.
Okay, your fourth year. So that will be I guess is this your final year of the doctorate? Or are you writing the dissertation now?
Yeah, I'm hoping to. Like, there's going to be a lot of work done over the summer, so like I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse, but like, you know, it's kind of like the final push now, where it's the reading, you know, furthering up the reading of the corners that, you know, you just need to make sure that you clean them up and make sure your proposal and stuff, all your paperwork is ready and set to go. So
yeah,
there's a lot of work ahead of me this summer concerning writing and things, but, you know, I mean, most of the stuff has been kind of like worked out, and it's just like kind of like just the finalizing, sanding down. So yeah, come September should be my fourth and final year where the dissertation is written and then hopefully accepted, and all the other things that kind of come along with submitting the dissertation paper.
Yeah, I'm going to my fifth year now, and it's almost. I think I know for sure it won't be done by this year. I needed to take a little bit more time, but it takes a while. It's a real schlep. It's a push. What are your, if I can go here, what are your plans for after doctorate? Do you have an idea of what you want to do when you're free from the shackles of academia? Do you want to go back into it? Do you want to get far away from it? Do you want to do something in between? What's
to
your
be
plan?
honest with you, I don't want to get away from academia. I kind of want to just keep on having it as something that I'm doing because
Yes.
I like discovering new things, and I'm just kind of a curious person all the time. So finding something new, and like honestly, like my projects are sort of the projects that I want to work on in the future. Once even before the doctorate's done, like I want to continue to like concertize and keep on writing and reading about research and contributing to it as any way that I possibly can. So those are kind of like the future. That's kind of like what I want to do in the future, and that's what I'm kind of like trying to set up for myself now.
That's great. So this is like you're a fish in water now. This is.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think to a point. I mean, like, I'm still figuring out a lot of stuff, but I want to, I definitely want to keep reading and writing, but also at the same time, I also want to work with like other musicians on like similar passion projects, and like, for example, like I'm trying to find other people who maybe want to start recording some other recording some music projects, new music or older music and things like that. So I'm trying to like also find ways to like bring my academia into performance and things. So I mean, I'm trying to do like the best as I can as a hybrid, rather than just like this is my performance life and this is my academic life. I'm trying to like bring them both together to kind of like do that.
That makes perfect sense. I think that's the best way to do it. I think that. Well, I maybe you'll answer this. You'll say something about this in the next question that we have here. Naoko Tsujita asked. My wife asked, any suggestions or comments for people who are considering a DMA?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Big question. Comments and considerations. Ooh, where to start?
Or suggestions.
Or suggestions.
Yeah.
A lot of the kind of like the stock question, like the stock suggestions are kind of like, when you start the DMA program, know exactly what you want to do, get that project locked down, and like, it's great, it's great if you can do that and have like, I exactly want to look at this and this and this, and like, it does help you kind of like overcome some of the hurdles at the beginning. But what I would say is like, the best way to kind of like do a DMA, or my best suggestion for people who are considering doing a DMA, what you love about music is usually the thing that you will want to research on. So go in with like, and if you haven't found that yet, that's fine. But put yourself out there into the program and talk to professors and read as much as you possibly can, and just engage with the student community as much as you possibly can. And I can guarantee you, like, at least this is what worked for me. You will find
that's very true to my experience as well. But yeah.
Yeah, and just like by talking to people, like eventually you'll find that one book, that one CD, or maybe you'll wake up in the middle of the night and then like, you'll have that idea that just strikes you. Like, I know exactly what I want to look at, or at least start. And so I'd say go in with that, and then. Also, another thing is that, like, during the process of a DMA, for those of you who have already started and maybe feel a bit lost in the waters, like, you're going to get bumped around a few times. It's not a malicious thing, and that's okay. You got to kind of just roll with the punches. Your project, even if you meet rejection along the way somewhere, it doesn't mean that the project is bad. It just means that it just needs to be developed in a different direction. So don't hear no, just hear convince me. And then work your way around or through that, and then honestly, like, and that's fine. A lot of people who I've met in the university that I'm currently at, like, their project where they started from and what they were going to do versus what they're doing now changed several times in between. And at the beginning, it's going to feel like you're starting from square one. It's not. But, you have figured something out. You just got to keep going through it, and it's hard. But like, after the 5th or 4th time, it's honestly a lot easier. It's it's still hard, absolutely, but like, just keep going through, believe in the project, try to find your project, engage with it as much as you possibly can, and go forward with it. And then just small things that like work for me, this is my personality quirk, but like, if you are in a DMA and you're trying to balance your work life and performance stuff, like, honestly, keep notebooks everywhere. And I'm not kidding. So like I have like notebooks everywhere all over this apartment. I'm like Professor Paper notebooks everywhere. Like I'm just constantly scratching things down, and like I have notebooks next to the bed if I wake up in the middle of the night with an idea, and I frequently do, and I'm just like, okay. So, you know, if you're like me like that, just do it. Don't just embrace that nutty quality of yourself and just do it. It's fine. Like, it's honestly better. Don't think that you're going to go to sleep and remember in the morning. I've had that happen. Just don't. Right?
Yeah, it never happens.
Yeah, like literally I one time had an idea in the shower and I had to run to my desk because I was like, no. You know. Is that normal? I don't know. I'm not the guy who you should ask, but I'm just saying. Keep paper nearby, something that you can write with. Voice memos, paper pads, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just like keep something to write near you at all times.
Yeah. I was reading a really good book about executive function and like in ADHD and stuff, and it was saying, you know, if you don't write it down, it never happened. If you don't write it down, it never happened. You have to write it down. If you ever have an idea, write it down. It's very, very true what you're saying. That's great advice. Wow, that was not the advice I was expecting, but very, very insightful. Wow, thank you for that, Benjamin. That's awesome. Wow, I'm gonna take that to heart in my own life. Yeah. This is great. So does anyone have any more questions as we gradually wrap up?
Fire away.
Yeah, we can just, well, as we're doing that, I'll just say, you know, thank you again, Benjamin, for this great concert, for this refreshing music, performed so well and with so much passion and precision and focus and musicality, I think we all had a really great time, and for anybody who enjoyed this concert as much as I did, please contribute to Benjamin's concert, because this artist deserves millions of dollars. If you ever watch those hockey players that you see, they get paid millions of dollars just to go on the ice, you know. So why can't musicians have that? And if you can't, maybe consider sending $5 or $10 to the artists that you see performing, because you know, it's a challenging time for artists in the world, and that's why 100% of the contributions that are received for Concerts for the End of Time go directly to the artists. I don't make any profit from running this show. It's entirely about the artists and supporting them and making sure that they, you know, can have an opportunity to perform, to learn how to live stream, to learn how to, you know, share their music with the world, and also just you know, get recognition for what they're doing in a way that matters. So I hope that you can check out that link at https://paypal.me/concerts for end of time. And before we wrap up, does anyone have any last questions? Last call for questions. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ben. It was great having you here, and hope to have you again in the future. It was just a really great time. Really perfect program.
Thank you, Daniel.
All right.
It was a real pleasure to play. Thank you for having me on your series, and like, it's really amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.